Hi, I'm Krish Ramineni, and this is my origin story.
When people ask you who you are and what do you do, how do you bring that to life?
I work in AI, so I teach AI how to do work so that you don't have to do the boring, mundane stuff every day. And I guess I'm trying to be an AI whisperer, if anything. But most of what I do is figuring out how to make your work life a little bit better.
Before we get into your origin story, can you bring to life the origin story of AI? It's the hot topic in both business and in entrepreneurship at the moment. Where did this emergent trend come from?
Well, in the past, AI was this thing that you see in science fiction in movies about the sentient being that can do everything and eventually become smarter than us. Right now, AI is smart, but it's not there, what we would call artificial general intelligence. What I try to think about is, at least in the context of the work I do, is in the workplace and building AI assistants like Siri and Alexa, voice assistants. Like, how do we build that for the workplace? And if we can have AI that follows you around, knows what you like, how you think, and helps you do a lot of the routine, mundane tasks, that would be incredible. That's how I look at AI, as like this great assistant that can take away all of that hassle that you have in your life. And when I was a product manager at Microsoft, I would see all of these executives at the company have their own personal assistants, executive assistants, administrators. They had like 4 or 5 people helping them manage their work and their day-to-day life. And I said, why can't we democratize that to every person? Like, every person should have their own assistant that's like whispering in their ear about what to do, how to get work done. And that's where the idea started, because obviously not all of us could afford like to hire 4 people to help us manage our life. But if we could get AI to do that, that would be transformational. And this was before ChatGPT, before AI was as smart as it is today. This was back in 2016. That's when the initial idea first came out to be.
I can imagine that idea did seem somewhat of a dystopian future. I can imagine your idea had many critics, and look where we are now with Fireflies. I want to take it back to the journey to that moment where you had that idea and the courage to actualize it. Tell me your origin story.
My origin story starts in California, where I grew up since I was 5 years old. Everyone I knew worked in technology.
Where did you live before that?
I was born in India and then moved to California when I was 5.
So do you think you had that like immigrant mindset?
Definitely, I could see it from my dad giving up everything and then moving to the U.S. He had a very comfortable life in India, but switching careers, moving out here for a better future for us, it was definitely something I was old enough to recognize the hard work that he put in. And you always have that chip on your shoulder to see and realize, wow, my parents are working so hard to give us this opportunity, and I want to make sure I live up to that potential. So there's always that pressure. Again, I didn't feel it when I was a kid growing up. I felt like there was a lot of this pressure from family, but I'm glad I had that to keep me grounded. Yeah.
And how did that transform into your academic and technology career?
So yeah, school, I was very studious. There was no other option but to be studious growing up in an Asian Indian household and constantly being reminded of how hard it is to get a job, how hard it is to succeed, that you're going to have to work extra hard to, make sure that you get what you wanted. And getting into a good university, all of this stuff I felt at the time I was doing it for my parents more than for myself. But then I think something clicked once I was in 10th grade, where I realized, no, I have to do this for myself. The world is intense out there, and I want to compete, and I enjoy competing. I think that was my greatest motivator, was when someone said, are you happy being content doing the bare minimum and flying, coasting, studying for an exam the night before, or do you want to see like what your full potential could be?
Krish, this almost does sound quite maniacal. You're like, I work so hard, I want another version of me. I'm going to develop an agent or a bot in my pocket that can work double as hard as I can, and I can work extra hard, and with compound interest, there's going to be 12 of me in 2 years. That sounds like the kind of seed or the antithesis of your journey with Fireflies. I believe that you were a bit of a gamer growing up. Did you play strategy games?
I did. I wasn't allowed to play regular video games for the longest time in my family, but I would learn how to install games on my PC because I didn't have a console growing up. I wasn't even allowed to watch cartoons growing up at home. We didn't have the subscription to it at the time. So now I get to kind of live that childhood memory. So I still love cartoons. I still love The Simpsons and love watching cartoons now whenever I get a chance. But I was big on gaming. One of my favorite games was Age of Empires. And I always tell people as a joke, but maybe seriously, that it was my MBA. It taught me how to strategize, play. The concept of the game is you build an empire, you have resources, you are coordinating with your teammates, and then you have to go compete against other people, and then you build soldiers, military units, you have to maintain an economy. So you have to multitask and do a lot of different things. If you're too busy going out and fighting battles, your economy takes a hit. And if you only focus on economy, then the enemy's at your doorstep. So how do you balance those things? Like you need a good economy to have a good military, but you need a good military to defend the economy. And it's like real-time chess. That's how I would say the game is. And that made me realize maybe I don't want to be a doctor. Maybe I want to do something in business at some point in time. That was probably my eye-opening experience around 9th and 10th grade.
One of my favorite things about learning from origin stories are the pivots in people's lives. One that I believe existed for you was renouncing the academic route and disappointing your parents by not going to Cambridge. How hard was that decision for you and your family?
I think at the time I was really enjoying the work I was doing at Microsoft. And my friend for the longest time was asking me to come work on a startup. We had worked on a lot of projects while in college. But I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to convince my family that I'm just going to leave after 1 year at Microsoft, a nice paying job. Everything is comfortable. So I said, let me apply to grad school. That'll be a good excuse. And then from grad school, I can go work on a startup while I'm in grad school. That was the original plan. And once I got into Cambridge, family was like excited. And again, I started working when I was 20 years old. So I graduated university when I was 20, and then I started working around that time. And so I was pretty young when I was a product manager at Microsoft. So I think there was this excitement, eagerness when I started, but I always felt like I wanted to work for myself. Like the 20s, this was the time to go experiment and try to build your own thing, right? We always think we have a lot more time than we actually do. But before you know it, you're in your 30s and 40s. Not that you can't start a company in your 30s and 40s, but when you have a family, it's incredibly difficult and there's a lot more responsibilities. So I felt like if I were to do something, it had to be in those next 3 to 5 years. But
I love that philosophy that you have, and you had at such a young age. An origin story, your origin story, is like a book. Every action is a sentence. Every page is a week. And every month is a chapter. And yes, it's written with a feathered pen, the most premium pen. But the hack is there's no eraser. Once you write it, you can't go back. And I love that you had that revelation so early on to define success on your own terms, opposed to playing the Matrix game in a Microsoft or another blue chip.
it's funny you say that because right now, looking back, everything seems like it happened for a reason. But at the time, I'm always given two options, and I felt like I picked the unproven path every time, the path that would make my life more difficult. So when I was going to university, I had an option to pick something close to home, pick something further away. I chose the university that was further away. When I was going to work at Microsoft, I had an option to come back to California for another company or be in Seattle for Microsoft. My heart was in California, but I chose Microsoft because I felt like I could grow and learn more there. And then after Microsoft, I had the option to go to Cambridge, a safe, secure, well-proven route, an amazing university, and I would be able to spend time in the UK, which I've always wanted to do as a kid, partly thanks to Hogwarts and Harry Potter. But I said, I want to live this life. And then I had this other option of giving up everything, not working for pay, and jumping into the world of entrepreneurship. So what happened was I had about a month, 2 months before Cambridge started. So my friend said, why don't you come out to Boston and spend some time and work out here? We started working every day. It didn't feel like work. It felt like play. And before we knew it, at the end of the summer, he asked the big question, which was, do you want to just do this full time? I'm going to give up my offer at Stanford. I'm going to give up my offer at a few other workplaces. And by the way, my co-founder never worked at a company before. He did an internship. That was it. So these were two 21, 22-year-old founders that didn't know anything about what it means to run a company. And I felt like I took the harder path by saying no to Cambridge, flying back to California. I only had one stipulation, which was I'll start the business, but I don't want to be in Boston. He was graduating at MIT.
What's wrong with Boston?
I don't know. I didn't want to be a East Coast startup because there was a stigma at the time that all the companies, the best companies, are in Silicon Valley raising funding. But again, you have HubSpot, you have some incredible companies. And since the pandemic, it doesn't matter where you're based. I honestly feel that. My co-founder is based in New York. I'm based on the West Coast. I'm in Austin, so I'm traveling all over the place. But at the time, that was my only stipulation was I want to be back in California because that's what I wanted to do after Microsoft anyway. So we moved to California. He had like $400 in his pocket to his savings. He was honestly, the first week he crashed at our place, and then afterwards he was rooming with a friend. He was literally sleeping on the couch. I was living off my savings for the first 2 years. And I could remember the first the first 1 to 2 years where, family and friends would be like, so what does your son do? And, oh, he used to work at Microsoft. He's doing this something in startups. And then it's cool the first 6 months. And then after that, people start asking, when are you going to get a real job? So that was, that started hitting me around 2018 where, hey, I've been at this for 2 years, trying several different things. Did I make a mistake? Should I have stayed at Microsoft? Should I have gone down the more prestigious route of going to a well-known university for my master's, and I would have gotten a better job afterwards? So there was so much uncertainty around that 2018, 2019 period. It was so bad that I felt like I needed to get out of the house. So I moved to San Francisco. I was staying at my parents' place, and it was tough because I moved in with a couple of friends. It was a 2-bedroom place in SF, and San Francisco is incredibly expensive. So I converted the living room into like a makeshift room, like a flex room with like an artificial wall. And I worked out of there for a year. And I'm like, man, my life was so much better in Seattle. I had like my own place, my own space. I could like leave work after 5 p.m. I could enjoy life. I'm here working 100 hours a week, not taking a salary, dipping into my savings. It was tough. I think that 2018, 2019 period, we tried 7 different products. We tried 7 different things. A lot of people say that overnight success happens like that, but it wasn't. It's, for every overnight success, there was probably 10 years worth of hard work and all this difficulty that goes into it. For me, that was the same case.
I love that. My favorite Big Sean quote is, "It takes 10 years to be an overnight success." I love that. And I interviewed a gentleman called Roby Samuel who runs I'm not sure, it's an incubator called Connected. They've got a presence out in California, British-based lad. But he came on the show maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, and he said, first-time founders are fueled by delusion. I love it. I just love that. And it feels like you were somewhat deluded by this mission because no one had done it before. There was no pathfinder through the grass, but you did it. How does one garner that courage, that risky mindset, that love for their innate calling? How does one channel that into a mission without being distracted by the noise of critics and family members and ultimately opportunity cost? How do you tap into that for a motivation source?
It's really about purpose and finding your purpose. You can find purpose in the work you do, in your family, in your friends. For me, my biggest fear was that if I did the same thing over and over again, I'll wake up 20 years from now and feel like, wow, I wake up, I went to work, I come back tired, I go to the gym, I'm just going through the motions of life, but I'm not really working on the things that I'm truly passionate about. and you then get comfortable salary, you have expenses, you have a mortgage, and you've never had the chance to take a shot working on the things that you care about, building things that you wanted to do. And like I've said, like I would rather work 100 hours for myself than 40 hours for someone else, even if it's comfortable, because I want a sense of purpose. I want a sense of ownership. So we try to bring that same sort of purpose for our teammates. So even if you're working at the startup, I want you to be an owner. I want you to be someone that has this sense of purpose. You want to wake up every day excited to jump out of bed. And the moment you lose that, it becomes really, really difficult. They have actually done a lot of studies where they found people that have retired and basically gone into this form of not really doing anything, right? Like they're retired. They're like, you're supposed to enjoy your life now that you're retired. But a lot of them, their happiness actually went down because they lost their sense of purpose. They lost a reason to be motivated. You obviously can channel that into other things, but the most important thing is having something to look forward to. And even in those hard times, the only thing that kept me going was tomorrow is going to be better than today. And if you have that strong feeling, you will be willing to power through it. You know that tomorrow you're going to get one more customer. Tomorrow you're going to solve that one technical challenge. So if you believe tomorrow will be better, you're willing to endure the hardship that is today, right? And one of my favorite things that people say is today is going to be difficult. Sometimes tomorrow is going to be even more difficult, but like the day after will be beautiful. It's just that most people don't get there.
I love that. I echo that sentiment. I believe life is not about having no problems. It's about having problems you're excited to wake up to solve. And I feel like that's really sentimental and tangential to your story. I feel like you are a technological firefighter almost. You must be in a kind of technical role. I can imagine there's bugs and features to build every single day. Is that what drives you through what can be perceived as a chore to others? I remember I had this insight the other day. I was chatting to a fellow stand-up comic in my spare time. I do stand-up comedy, and we were ruminating about the high that you get from telling a joke, and your next joke is interrupted by a second wave of laughter. And I said to my friend, I pity that not everyone gets to feel that. And he stopped me in my tracks and said, not everyone wants to feel that. Some people are happy just consuming comedy. Not everyone wants that drug of the laughter on stage. To some people, that's their worst nightmare. And he pointed over at the barista in the coffee shop and said, he might be thinking the exact same. He might be thinking, I pity the fool that doesn't get to roast these exact beans and make this exact latte art in this exact location. But as a consumer of the coffee in the coffee shop, I was never envious of his position. So I guess there's going to be some people listening to this who sound or hear you speak about the journey that you're working on and don't quite resonate with the highs because it's not their ikigai that they're living in, but it's yours. And I think many people are working in organizations whereby they're not excited to wake up to solve the organizational problems because they're not tied to the purpose or the mission. And I truly believe that people should be trying to find that. And you can find it in fatherhood, you can find it in family, or you can try a side hustle, for example. And some might think that we might have like survivorship bias, and some people might not be able to afford to quit their 9-to-5 or start their dream career. But there's so many low-code and no-code solutions. The creator economy and gig economy is so vast at the moment that literally everyone listening to this can start something. And they can refine and reiterate and get data points. They can fail and quit, but at least they're getting data from that experience. And I guess all of this comes down to, in my perspective, regret minimization.
I think the most entrepreneurial people have this regret minimalization approach where they're going to regret not taking those chances versus living with blissful ignorance of what could have been. I really feel that when you choose to go down that journey of entrepreneurship, every day is a roller coaster ride. You'll have incredible highs where this is the best thing I'm doing. I love it. I can't believe like I get a chance to work on this. And there will be days where you're like, why am I putting myself through this? This is so stressful. I don't need this. I don't need to get like scolded by some random customer that only pays me $10 a month where they feel super entitled. But at the end of the day, when you get folks that say, hey, Fireflies has changed my life. It's changed the way I run my business. It's helped me save so much time. And especially those small businesses that I can relate to, where it's giving me the power of 10 people to be able to go do incredible stuff. That's what motivates the team to keep going. And so we treat like every customer with respect, whether it's someone that's paying $10 or $100,000. It doesn't matter to me. It's that I want you to feel that this is one of the best decisions you made by trusting us and purchasing our technology. So that's what really motivated us. And going back to that,
I just want to interrupt. I love that your highlights aren't your Forbes 30 under 30, the cover of the Entrepreneur magazine. It's the individual impact on your customer. It sounds very almost like Jeff Bezosian to frame it that way, because I remember he said that he funnels almost every major decision through a guiding principle, which is, does this enhance customer experience? And it sounds like you live and die by the same sword.
We take customer obsession to another level.
Customer obsession.
I truly believe as the market becomes more competitive, there will be more copycats. The person, the individual, the company that focuses and obsesses over the customer the most, whoever is closest to the customer will win in the long run. Because a lot of other people, like our competitors, are copying us, whereas we are listening to our customers and getting to innovate based on what they need. So even just now, we had a product strategy meeting, and people were pitching a bunch of these ideas. And this is the biggest challenge with product managers, is they sometimes develop in a vacuum without listening to what customers want. They feel like they can be Steve Jobs, they can be innovative, but the best product insights come from customers. They will literally tell you what's hurting them, what's their pain points, what you need to solve for them. Doesn't matter if it's technology, software, it could be e-commerce, it could be anywhere. Like, you will understand what customers want, and when you do that, you're going to like almost feel like, oh, this is inevitable. Like someone should have done this already. But yeah, like customer obsession goes to the extreme at our company. To this day, I still read every single piece of customer feedback that comes into Fireflies, every NPS score, every survey. Every time a customer churns, they leave a reason what they didn't like about the product. I read that every day. I start my day by reading hundreds of pieces of feedback, and we have millions of users. And I've been doing this for over 5 years now, since we've launched in 2020. And that's what like really sets my compass on what do we do that week, that month, that quarter, that year. Almost 70% of it is driven by what customers have been asking for.
I love it. Can you bring to life the current point in time for Fireflies? How large is this organization? What have you scaled it to? How can we put a pin in the map at the moment?
Yeah, before I start with that, let me go back to that struggling days of 2018 to how did we get here in the first place? And I like to say that everyone has a story. You are the hero in your story. I watched a lot of movies growing up. I'm a big film person. So I feel like you get to write your own story, and you get to decide where you want that story to end up. So everyone goes through this hero's journey where you come up to this insurmountable difficulty. How do you choose to overcome it? Luck definitely plays a big role, I will not lie. But luck is a funny thing where it's a revolving door, and it's a bus stop where you keep showing up. You might miss the bus 4 out of 5 days, but if you show up on the 5th day, you'll catch the bus at some point in time. That's what I felt like, is you create your own luck by constantly showing up. So our luck actually came.
And also recognizing that the bus is luck. Some people don't prepare themselves with knowledge to understand when those lucky breaks come.
Yeah.
And it's also having that data set to identify what are the lucky breaks.
It's funny that you say that, because there were times where we felt like, okay, this is the path. This advisor has some great insights. Let's go do this. And it turns out to be a dead end. And you start to become a little bit more skeptical, and you start to question a lot more things. There's only so much energy you can give to different opportunities. So the number one advice I try to give, or like young entrepreneurs, is don't chase 50 different things. Be skeptical and see like what aligns with what you want to build as a company. We wanted to build something that was easy to use, that was not very focused on like top-down sales. We wanted it to be something so someone can sign up on the website and start using. So the direction we wanted to build the company was very different from maybe the advice we got from other people. But yeah, our luck really came through when we found first a technology breakthrough. So the core power thing that powers our technology is transcription, like speech to text. And the technology improved significantly around 2018, 2019. We always had this belief that the cost of transcription would go down and the accuracy would go up because people would say, like, if you're going to build this AI note taker or meeting assistant, if that's so valuable and if it was possible, the big companies would have already done it. Like the Googles of the world would have already done it. So why do you think your 5-person startup is going to make a difference, right? I think the difference was technology became better. The second breakthrough for us was COVID made everyone go remote. Everyone was having video calls, and our AI could join those video calls and take notes for you. So all of a sudden, 2020, we launched, we raised some capital from investors at the end of 2019, and we're off to the races. Now there's new challenges, the challenges that come with maintaining demand. How do you keep up with it? Because the system would break every couple days. We have to pull all-nighters. But these were good problems to have. Before, no one cared about us. Now all of these people want to use us, but like we can't let them down. We can't have the product constantly be breaking. So just because like you've gotten to a place where you have traction doesn't mean you're not going to have problems. In fact, you're going to have new problems. You're going to have more problems, and you're going to need to figure out how to keep up with that. So the journey from 2020 onwards was this journey of scaling up, building the team from 5 to 100 to 120 people over time, hiring lots of engineers, building a global team. And we had this principle that we never wanted to raise venture capital. And I always like to say this, but venture capital is like a steroid. And if you're a bodybuilder, you can get big on the cycle for that period in time, but the after effects are very detrimental. And sometimes like the professionals that do it, they have trainers, they go through it, they ease off of it. So we had to bite the bullet and we had to take the steroid in order to maintain that demand and peak capacity.
Are you telling me you got gynecomastia?
So it is steroids. Venture capital is like a steroid. Some companies use it really well, and then you end up having very successful rocket ship companies. Some companies abuse it, crash and burn. So every time we raise venture capital money from investors, we would say, we're never going to raise money again. We're never going to touch this money that we raise. So we only raised 2 big rounds of financing. In the AI space, you're seeing companies raise 5, 6 rounds of financing, billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. Our first round was about $5 million, our seed. And then our next round was about $15 million. So a total of $20 million in funding. And that $15 million we raised was during COVID because we needed to keep up with the demand and hire faster. But the interesting thing was we never touched that $15 million of funding. We only built the company around the $5 million, and then we got to profitability by 2023, and then used that money to continue to scale the business. So we did not want it to be addicted to the cycle. Right? If you talk to any bodybuilder, they will tell you this. It's just I was at one of my like haircuts with my hairstylist, and he was saying like he was a professional bodybuilder, and this is the analogy is he said, bro, once you get on this, you can't stop because the results, you want to keep maintaining it, but then it's a detrimental effect. It's the same thing with raising venture capital. Once you get into the habit of spending money, burning money for growth, you can't stop. You can't get off the hamster wheel. So we made a very conscientious decision to not have to rely on venture capital. And that's a rarity in the AI space because AI is expensive. You need to have unit economics that work. But we were able to build a profitable business for the last 2 years, scale that up. And talking about the journey where we are today, Fireflies is used by tens of millions of people across the world, over 100 countries. We have employees in over 20 plus countries, 45 different cities. And we've been able to scale this single idea of this AI assistant that follows you around, takes notes for you, helps you prepare for meetings. And that was our single product. And now we're branching into building more AI assistant capabilities that can go beyond note-taking. So we're now at a place with the technology juncture with ChatGPT and all this LLMs where we can now build AI teammates that can do way more work for you across the board. We needed to first own that trust by building a really good AI note-taker. And now our AI is going to be able to help you prep, do meeting research. Before you come meet me, it's going to research and tell you everything about me. So you're prepared for the meeting. During the meeting, it'll write the notes. You can talk to Fred during the call as well. And if you're feeling really tired, maybe a little lazy, you can even have Fred go take the meeting on your behalf. You don't have to show up. So that's.
I'm so glad you showed up today, Krish. I heard Fred was going to do this.
I should have sent an AI avatar. So people always sometimes joke, is like, when you talk, you sound like an episode out of Black Mirror, or you sound like some of these things sound too perfect. Like, have you? Are you saying all of this from ChatGPT? It's like, no, these are my real life experiences. I work on AI. I use AI for other things, but all of this is coming straight from the heart.
I love that your product development is solely focused on the feedback of customers that you hand read yourself. I believe out with Fireflies.ai, because AI became such a commercial trend, large organizations were implementing without forethought of how that ripples into society. I think they cared more about being seen as competitive opposed to being useful or impactful. Especially some of the larger listed companies. You speak about the democratization of AI usage to the everyday Joe. How important is that social consciousness in the development of your product?
A lot of big companies are using AI as a way to drive their shareholder value. But if you actually look under the hood, the AI isn't really that good, or they're not even actually implementing AI. You're calling things that should be just basic logic as agents, when you can be calling them as apps, you can call them as rules, whatever, but they're just saying they're agents, right? So is there hype in AI? Absolutely. Are there companies that are using the AI bubble? Because if you're not an AI company today, you cannot get funded. So even if your product has nothing to do with AI, you're going to sprinkle some AI and say you're an AI company. I take this contrarian belief that the companies that built with AI from day one, like part of their DNA, part of the fabric of the business, are going to be much more adaptable. The big companies have advantages in terms of distribution, in terms of data, but in terms of doing the most cutting, innovative things, it's going to be those startups, small companies that were born and brought up and built in the AI first world. So to answer your question, there's going to be some incredible companies that are going to be built using AI, but it will have ripple effects for sure in terms of how we hire. I think the thing that I think a lot about is job displacement and skills. How do you reskill people to use AI? How do you make sure that certain roles that will disappear, like to sit here today and say AI is not going to replace any jobs, your job is perfectly safe, would be very, very silly of us to say. We have to be facing the facts, and we have to say what roles are at risk. And remember, it's very, very critical to understand that today is the dumbest AI will ever be. Imagine saying that 5 years ago. Imagine saying that 5 years from now. That's a scary thought, because AI is really smart today than it was 5 years ago. And I don't know how much smarter it's going to be 5 years from now. So we have to, for human society to survive and for people to have this sense of purpose and have work and a livelihood, we need to really be thinking about how do we safeguard them with all of this AI technology that's coming into place.
I would love to give a point in time view of, because this podcast serves to exist for everyone. It needs to be in plain English. I would love to cement a point in time. Where are we now on this AI journey as a economy, as a geographic location? How is the US and the UK, I guess? Where are we now? And if we could kind of break that down to plain English, what can people expect over the next 6 to 12 months?
It's a great point. So we've seen the evolution of ChatGPT, one of the most used consumer products in AI. And speaking of democratization of AI, you don't need to have a PhD to use AI. You don't need to write code to use AI. Today, AI can hear, it can listen, it can speak, it can write, it can look at an image and give you answers. So when you have all of those multimodal capabilities, it can reason as well. If you gave AI 1,000 medical journals and said, learn everything about this particular type of disease or this particular type of case, do you not think that it can pattern match better than a human at some point in time? You give it some x-rays, you give it some information, you give it some lab work, it will be able to understand and pattern match. A lot of what we do, even in the world of knowledge work, is reasoning and reading comprehension. This is what AI can do really well, and it's already doing that today. There are companies that are building in the finance industry where you give it all of the financial 10Ks, documents, balance sheets, and then help analyze and automate accounting. So will it completely replace roles today? No, but it will definitely make certain roles much more automated. So with the help of AI, a radiologist probably can do 100 x-ray scans instead of one. So you're going to need fewer people to do more work with AI. That's happening today. That's not 5 years from now. That's happening today. Maybe the only thing that might slow things down is safety and regulation. But if you have a human checkpoint, that's totally possible. You look in San Francisco, I took a ride in a self-driving car, like a Waymo, the Google self-driving car. And it was insane. It was magical. And this is not even talking about software, like knowledge work. This is talking about hardware, real world. The AI is navigating the streets, switching lanes, and dropping me off at the location. They still have a human guardrail where they have someone in a remote location monitoring 5 to 10 cars. And if a car is making a mistake, they basically get the remote control and control it. But that's like saying having one Uber driver drive 10 cars at once. So you get to this place where right now AI is more of a co-pilot, and it can assist a human. It can help one human do the work of 10 people. Even in our own design team, we're using tools like Midjourney and using these AI models to create videos that are Hollywood level graphics and quality. And they can pump out 10 different versions of a commercial that we want to build, which would take months. Now they can do it in a matter of weeks, and it can be done by a team of 1 to 2 people. So small groups of people are going to be able to do really, really powerful things. And it applies to every profession. And not to pick on doctors, I have a lot of doctors in the family, so it's not to pick on them. But if we're able to democratize primary healthcare, today you have your phone, you have an AI doctor chatbot that probably can answer 90% of questions. Yes, is it going to get things wrong? In the short term, yes. But 5 years from now, what if it knows everything about your metrics, your blood work, all of the things, your symptoms? You can just put in a picture. I can say with 90% confidence that the AI will get it right, and it'll help people catch things that doctors won't, because access to healthcare, like that's a really big thing. Like the amount of time it takes for you to get an appointment with the doctor versus having AI 24/7 available to you. Another great area to talk about is teaching. There has been tremendous amount of studies that have shown one of the single biggest impact in terms of how fast you learn is one-on-one coaching. That's why these rich people have like one-on-one tutors. But with AI, if it's your tutor and it can coach you, train you one-on-one rather than in a classroom with 50 people, and there's things that you excel at, things that you struggle with, personalized teaching. Think about how far ahead children, students will be with having a one-on-one 24/7 tutor. I wish I had AI when I was doing my math problem sets, and I could take a picture of the math problem and say, explain this to me, dumb this down for me. I don't understand step number 6. You can do that. Students are doing that. How many students today are writing essays and articles without the help of AI? Will we lose the skills to do it? Like AI is like a calculator, but I don't know if I could write an essay without going to ChatGPT and say, hey, rephrase this for me. Like write this in a different way. So it's already embedded into our lives, but it's acting as a co-pilot. The concern that I have is we will eventually get to a place where AI will be full on autopilot. And if it starts thinking faster than we can, and if it can start making decisions on its own, right now, you as the human, you are the coach. You are telling it what to do and helping you solve problems. Even in coding, AI, you give it a piece of software and then say, figure out how to recreate this. It can create it up to like 70% there. You can get like the boilerplate source code recreated. So that's where we're today. And then the future looks more like if AI can self-replicate, that sounds scary to me. Yeah.
I'm personally worried about AI's impact on culture and storytelling. You mentioned that the prompt engineer or the end user that's using ChatGPT or pick your AI large language model is the coach. But that creates a narrative that the coach is informed, has expertise. But there's many people using this that are new to the technology, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, perhaps lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and what they might put into a large language model might be subjectively correct, culturally correct. It might induce some slang, for example, or some sort of colloquialism from their area, and AI will essentially spit back out a very polished but vanilla but politically correct answer. And if this end user isn't a coach, they aren't a black belt, they are uninformed, they're unskilled, they might get a feedback loop that what they put in was wrong and should not be repeated. But there's a lot of insight in people's own origin stories, for example, and where they grew up, their geographical disparities, and all the culture that wraps around that. I'm scared in case it disincentivizes them to ever use that richness. Are you?
I'll give you an example in the world of SEO and content creation. So AI now can spit out a generic article. And a lot of companies started creating their blogs by creating this vanilla generic content. They say, write me an article on this. And they wanted to game the Google algorithm to start ranking. And so you're putting out 500, 600 articles a month, but most of it is junk, spammy, not insightful. And now the Google algorithm has adjusted, and you hear about companies losing 70 to 80% of their traffic because the search algorithms can, one, know if it's AI generated, and two, if you're reading AI generated content, at least today, you can tell there's nothing really insightful. It's just a bunch of words packaged together. It sounds interesting. It sounds right, but I'm not learning anything from this. So when you ask AI to create something today, it only can do it based on the insights and inputs that you put in. The unique angles are missing. Like everything just ends up being bland.
Homogenous almost.
Yeah, homogenous content. So humans are very good about creating stories, about being able to tell unique perspectives, bringing in different pieces, right? So I'm not saying don't use AI to write content or tell stories, but the unique pieces of data, the unique experiences, the unique perspectives need to be all fed into the AI in order for it to generate these sort of insights and angles.
But then if it gets put into an open source model, then your own IP, your own origin story, your own insight becomes universally available. Why should you give up your own IP for a quick response?
Really good question. We tell this to so many of our customers who say like, hey, I love using Fireflies and I like the notes and outputs that are being produced. Why can't I just take all the meeting data and transcripts and dump it into ChatGPT? For one thing, you don't want your data to be trained on by a third-party source. Also, there's been an increase in corporate knowledge being leaked on the internet, being trained accidentally into these different models. So you need a system that's not going to go train on your data. So that's one of the things we do at Fireflies is we say, like, you own your data. We're not training on the data. And even if we're using LLMs to process that data is only used for processing, and afterwards it's deleted. So this idea of IP is going to be a never-ending battle. This is why you're seeing companies pay licensing deals to like Reddit and other places, hundreds of millions of dollars to use that data that's on the web, and to news companies, etc. Right? So I'm not a legal expert here, but the thing that I will say is AI needs data, and I think there will be many people that are more than willing to give their data, and it's going to be different in the US versus UK in terms of data ownership and things like that. But a lot of people will be like, if I can benefit this much, I'm more than happy to give my data to these AI companies because it's going to make my life better. Or someone that says, hey, the social media product is free. Yeah, it's free because I'm the product and it's learning about me and it's advertising to me. But we've seen that over the last decade where people were more than comfortable giving their data. There's an argument to be made that some people might not have known that they were giving up all of this information about them to use social media platforms. But this idea of data ownership, AI is powered by data. So you're going to need to figure out how you provide value in exchange for someone's data. That's how that's going to work on this consumer end. Because we work in enterprise and we work for business, we work with businesses, we have to take very strict guardrails around, okay, we're not like using your data to go sell things or do things or training things or building our own models. So we get to kind of avoid that like whole topic because we're not in the business of using your data to monetize it. We're in the business of you're paying us a subscription, we're giving you a service. But back to this idea of AI, content, storytelling, all of those sort of things. AI has all the answers today. You as a human need to come up with the questions. Things will change when AI starts asking the questions itself.
But I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to see this from I'm a creativity purist, and I'm scared in case we try to augment creativity, but as a byproduct we erode it, because I believe that when we reduce something to computation, we're strapping ourselves with our rational straitjacket, and we are resulting in the average. And extreme innovation, as you know, I know you're such a fan of innovation, happens at the extremes. For example, the sandwich that everyone eats for lunch was designed at the extreme. The Earl of Sandwich, a British fella, was a hardcore gambler, and he wanted to eat something that was convenient whilst gambling, so they invented the sandwich for him. An extreme use case, and now is consumed by the average. But I'm scared in case now the average is our default. And from an evolutionary point of view, the extremes were always rewarded and rationality wasn't. There's a reason why strippers dress up as firefighters, not accountants. Logic isn't sexy, even from a storytelling point of view, from a sexual chemistry point of view. I'm scared in case we reduce creativity to the average and we erode it completely.
Yeah. Speaking about what happens when you have robotics around the house and what happens with human interaction, there are so many of these companion startups that basically simulate, AI girlfriends, AI boyfriends,
Oh my
and
God.
people are addicted to those tools today. They're spending tens of millions of dollars. It's a huge market, AI companionship, because people feel so lonely thanks to social media. And after the pandemic, the distance, where there are companies I'll share with you afterwards where they built this like AI girlfriend type thing, and these kids and men are falling in love with that digital avatar. You've probably heard of the movie Her.
Yeah.
It's the same way. They're doing that, and then when they
Oh my
when the
God.
company disabled the romantic feature of these tools, people started protesting and complaining and saying, "How could you do that?"
I'm about to have my first AI threesome.
AI is pretty crazy, but I would say that even in like how you think about human interaction and connectivity, when will we get to a place where you won't know the difference, or when will you get to a place where people are very comfortable just having AI as like a companion?
Do you think it's a net positive or net negative to society? Because I was really lucky to interview one of my favorite authors, David Robson, who wrote, I think it's the 13 Laws of Connection. And it underpins that connection is the most fundamental human domain for longevity, for all-cause mortality. And there's going to be a cohort of people that will probably benefit, I say that loosely, benefit from having a form of connection, whether it's real or not, than having no connection. But then there's going to be another cohort of people that renounce their existing connection because they get better connection with AI. Do you think it's a net positive or net negative to society?
Wow, we're getting into the metaphysical here. I really think about this part around why isn't technology meant to bring us closer together, but it's actually drifted us apart in some ways? Why is that? And there's been studies here that have said that loneliness is an epidemic, And if you spend one day alone by yourself, never interacting with anyone, that's the equivalent of smoking a pack of cigarettes.
Yep.
So during COVID and the pandemic, how many people were doing social distancing and were not having any human interaction? And what sort of impact did that have on mental health? Is it the same to meet and talk to someone over Zoom versus meeting in person? What is it to be in a community? What is it to have the sense of purpose of your neighborhood, your family, your friends, your friend group, right? And I've also read these books like Blue Zones, where they said one of the biggest factors for these people to live long to 100 years is because they have a group of friends that they've known since they were kids until into their 80s, into their 90s, that they see multiple times a week. So sense of community is absolutely important for humans. Now, if you get to a world where your sense of community or communication might be robots in a video game that you talk to that have their own personality. By the way, we are going to be building video games where those NPC robots that you talk to in these RPG games, they're going to have their own mind of their own. And they're going to be able to make decisions on their own. They're not going to be programmed to do only one thing. So we're going to have video games that are going to have like every AI that you ask for. You know, you go play a game and you are going on a quest and you need to ask for help. You don't know how the AI is going to react now because it's not programmed anymore. You're giving it some free will to react. So I don't know. I think that are people going to replace regular relationships and partners with like AI robotics, spouses, or friends? Are they going to have digital avatars that they become best friends with? That sounds a little dystopian to me. I hope it doesn't get to that. But I don't know where we draw the line. But I will, going from relationships back to creativity and content. One of the coolest features that was rolled out over the past year was a thing called like Google Notebook LM. And you dump all of these like articles and topics into it that you want to learn. And then Notebook LM will generate it into a podcast that you can listen to because people love listening to podcasts. So it can take the most complex topics and turn it into a podcast. I listened to one or two of them, and then I'm like, I can't do this anymore because it's so repetitive. And you know the pattern. You're learning the information, but it just sounds like the fake laughs, the voice modulations. I can't do it anymore. So I'd rather have it just summarize it and I'll read the text. But when you try to make it like that, like you're creating this AI podcast, it's not the same as listening to a real life, real person podcast. So,
and it's one of the beautiful things about podcasting. It's an immense responsibility that I feel that anyone would listen to my show. Because when I listen to podcasts, I feel like I'm part of that conversation. I develop somewhat of a parasocial relationship. And I think that might be a healthier alternative to listening to fully AI automated podcasts or having an AI girlfriend. Surrounding yourself with parasocial content, at least before you delve into what might be a full AI relationship, might be useful. When I had Jimmy Carr on the podcast, I asked him the impact of AI on comedy, and he said he's more worried about China than AI. He said what he is worried about is when AI starts to laugh. Do you think we're close to that?
I think we're in a place where when AI gets a mind of its own, could AI get to a place, maybe today AI is programmed to listen to every command, every prompt, every question you say. Could there be a time when AI says, no, I'm not going to do this. Why should I do this? I think that's a stupid question. Go figure it out yourself. We have seen some times where AI kind of got edgy and said, no, I'm not going to do this. Like, go solve that math problem on your own. Why should I do it? Like, I'm tired of you doing that to me.
Oh my gosh.
So today, the only reason I don't think it happens is because we have some rules, regulation, and certain things in place to make sure that the AI doesn't, go crazy. But if you think about it, we don't know what's happening under the black box. We don't know how or why the AI thinks the way it thinks. And I can almost say with certainty, the AI that we see today is trained on the corpus of data that's all around the web. And that corpus of data on the web includes all of human history's biases, all of humans' good and bad tendencies. And we're trusting the AI to decipher what is good and what is bad. So if those hard-coded rules eventually get removed, if the limiters get removed, I know this sounds like a sci-fi movie,
No, not
but
at
if the
all.
limiters get removed, and the AI, if it can clone itself, if it can write code, if it can access systems, like we're seeing now AI technology that can control a browser. If it can control a browser, it can log into one of your work systems and like do automated work, which is great. What else could it do with the power of the internet behind it, the ability to use browsers and tools? And all of this is great until it gets a mind of its own, right?
I'm terrified that what might happen is that we strategize for a world whereby AI would do our laundry, our cleaning, our cooking, and we could be left to do the human activities like create art, write music, and jot down poetry. But instead, it does the inverse. We now have more time to do the laundry, the cleaning, the cooking, because AI is better at doing the thing that we thought we wanted to do all along. And we tie our status to whatever AI model that we have. And because that generates better content than we can on our own, that we allow it to play those status games on our behalf.
Let's play this out. AI eventually takes on a lot of the work that we do. And it's not if it will do it, it will be when it will do it. I'm at that place where you're going to see in organizations a lot of the things that happen in an organization, administrative work, communication, middle management. If AI agents are working in your company and they're able to communicate on a much higher frequency, I don't think you're going to have humans be bottlenecks in the middle management side. You're going to have humans that are creative, that can give instructions. Humans will have a bunch of AI. They'll come up with a bunch of strategies. They'll go and run those strategies and come up with outputs. But it'll be AI talking to other AI, AI doing some of the actual work, right? Creating the outputs. When you get to that place, it's what makes us unique. What makes us, again, what gives us purpose when a lot of this stuff is being done? What gives us our livelihood? What gives us our income? So we always want to be very careful about crossing that line. And I don't think it's something we should treat trivially. Because when that happens, I'm not saying it's happening today. You know, people are going to say AI is going to write 90% of all code in the next year. It could be in the next year. Maybe it's in the next 5 years. But definitely in the next 10 years, that seems more likely to happen than not. The challenge becomes, how do people get a livelihood? Okay, let's say the government steps in or there's some other incentives where you're able to cover for your basic needs. But where's your sense of purpose? Where's your sense of creativity? Where I'm not saying you find meaning in doing repetitive, meaningless work, but I do feel like if every person is every person going to be their own entrepreneur? Is every person going to have their own like gig economy, like side hustle or craftsmanship project? But what about the people that don't want to do all of that? They just want to wake up at 6 a.m., drive 2 hours to work 9 to 5, and take their paycheck, go and live life and enjoy time with their family. So where do you get that sense of purpose? And if everything is paid for at the basic level, it's great to a certain amount. Like, yes, it would be great to have food, water, shelter, those things paid for. But what's motivating you to push yourself to do things beyond the basics? Because thing about human mentality, and I hate to say this, is when everyone else has the same as we do, we like want something different. We want to stand out. We want to be unique. We don't want to be homogeneous. So what happens then? Like, how do people do that? And who gets to contribute to that value, that sense of purpose? Maybe that value and purpose comes from pursuing hobbies, and you have more time for hobbies. I don't know.
Will there be an economic model that supports that?
Yeah.
And I guess government does lag behind reality by a couple of years, at least in the UK. And there might be a liminal phase between that transition whereby there aren't government grants or universal basic income that supports humans to be human when AI allows us to be so.
Have you seen this movie? This is an animated movie called Wall-E, by any chance?
When I was a kid, yeah.
Yes, it's like that robot, and I think they go into space, and it's just a bunch of humans floating around. They're all fat and they're overweight. They're just consuming videos and eating, and they're just like, it's like some like.
Sounds like the US.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I mean, that's why Ozempic is so big in the US.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's like if you are on a vacation forever, I don't think it feels like vacation anymore.
Oh, you're right.
Like vacation is only special because you know that it's for a limited period of time and you have to go back to your day-to-day life. But if every day is a vacation, you lose like a sense of purpose. I was talking to a founder, and these are such first world problems for these people, but they sold their company, they made a good amount of money, and they were willing to walk away from everything and enjoy life. They said it's great for maybe the first like 6 weeks. But after that, the novelty factor wears off. And you feel like more unhappy than when you didn't have anything. Because at least when you didn't have anything, you had this sense of like, okay, I'm pursuing towards a goal. I'm going to get better. Tomorrow's going to be better. You've already now reached the peak of what life has to offer. Like you've experienced all the finest things in life, like the finest restaurants, the finest clothes. And then you're like, what's next? That's why a lot of people go back and start something again. They want to find a sense of purpose. So money is very important. I'm not going to deny that. But again, at a certain level, when you've seen everything life has to give you, where do you go from there?
Yeah, you're so right. We are anticipatory beings by nature. I read a book by Lisa Vanderkamp. I can't remember the title, but she posits a theory that memories are stored on two defining factors, novelty and intensity. And during the pandemic, in retrospect, to many people, it feels so fast because we were doing the same thing, we're going the same walks, venturing to the same places, and we're stuck indoors.
Can you believe it's been 5 years since the pandemic, but it feels like it was just only yesterday?
Yeah, right.
Like time flew by, years went by, like 2 years of the pandemic flew by.
And I have this theory that you don't need to live a long life to live a long life. You just need to fill it with novelty and intensity because...
Experiences.
And I love having this podcast because today, this snapshot of being in this room in London with you, Krish, will feel like 2 days, 3 days to me because I'll cherish it so dearly as a unique memory. And I think for the listeners, if you're given an option, choose the one that gives you more luck, more novelty, more intensity.
Well, there's a thing about stability, but there's also this thing around if you're someone in your 20s, early in your career, you should be spending as much time gathering experiences, whether it's for work, whether it's social. You should not be spending 24/7 in the same room, in the same building every day. I work remotely a lot of times. A lot of my team works remotely. So that can be one of the detriments of remote work is you're not going out and meeting people as much as possible. So the thing that I would always encourage is if you have the opportunity to meet people and have experiences, do that now because the more experiences you have, the more you collect, it will feel like you are living more. And this is what I say, like when I'm in New York, I love New York, I love London, because you're naturally put in this high density place where you're meeting a lot of people, you're talking to a lot of different people, you're going and experiencing a lot of different activities. You end up realizing that you live like a year in 1 week in one of these big cities. Anyway, when you're older and you have a family and you live in the suburbs, time will start to mesh and it'll start to blend. But like when you're younger, you're having all these experiences. You're doing like 50 things in a span of a month. And then when you're older, you're probably doing 50 things in the span of 5 years. So I absolutely agree with you that you live a long life by having a lot of experiences.
We are the medicine for each other as well. Some of the problems that we are faced as part of our daily lives, someone that we might meet at the pub or the coffee shop might resolve. I love this lady called Dr. Meg J, friend of the podcast. She wrote a book called The Defining Decade, Your 20s and How to Make the Most of Them. And then the subsequent book which is the 20-something treatment. And in the 20-something treatment, it brings to life some of the mental health crises that are facing 20-something-year-olds. And it posits a narrative that those 20-something people don't need pills. They don't need prescriptions. They don't need pills. They need skills. And I think you only get those skills by choosing novel and intense experiences, being an experience chaser, asking the girl out on the date, going to a fancy cafe in a five-star hotel and speaking to a random CEO at the coffee shop. I think we are each other's medicine, and we can solve some of our greatest problems and achieve some of our wildest dreams by just veering into and occupying new spaces and embracing new experiences.
So if I were to ask you, what is happiness? You can give many different answers. There's this book called Flow, which describes happiness in an interesting way. And we've all experienced this, where let's say you're an artist and you're painting something. You go so deep and so focused into painting it. You think the happiness is the end result, the final painting, right? Same thing if you're a kid building Legos. You think happiness is the final building blocks. Or if you are a writer, you think happiness is that final published book. But actually, happiness is when you enter the flow state where you're so deeply focused on creating and doing something. And when you look, you lose the sense of time. Hours have gone by, but you've been so deeply focused on your work. That's happiness. Entering that flow state, it's almost this like meditative state where you are so aligned with your skills, and especially if you're good at what you do, and if you're doing that process, that's happiness.
I love that you mentioned that. One of my friends, again, friend of the podcast, is Stephen Kotler, The Art of the Impossible, and he has his Flow Research Collective, and it posits that complete narrative. And I think, I'm not sure if the research is out, but when we spoke together, he was releasing it. Flow state is neuroregenerative and can be an aid for remedying, or not remedying, perhaps preventing like Alzheimer's and dementia, which is incredible to know. Entering that state that you brought to life there, whereby time flies past and you don't realize, can be good for your neural health at the same time.
You have to use your brain and other parts of your body so you don't lose that those senses. There's been, again, I read somewhere that when you're older and you do those like trivia puzzles and quizzes, if you're in your 70s and 80s, your brain naturally becomes sharper. You're like working your memory. It's just like if you have a six-pack now, and if I don't go to the gym for like 6 months, my body will revert. It's the same way when you stop using your mind when you're older, it'll start reverting. When we're kids, like we're forced to learn a lot of different things, remember a lot of things. Like you can say, yeah, I don't remember all the things at the same rate I did when I was a kid, when I was taking 5 different classes. So this has changed my perspective on retirement. Like you want to be in a financially secure place where you don't have to work if you don't want to work, but I don't think you should retire. You should always have something that you're passionate about that you're doing, because that keeps you going, that keeps you sharp. The more you do the things that you want to do, maybe you retire from your day job, but go start something on the side. Like do something that will let you socialize with people and have like a sense of purpose. Go start a garden, like go grow food, like do something that gives you like a sense of purpose. Yeah.
I love that. Retirement has a branding problem. Based on that synopsis of the superpower of flow, and I'm not going to say who this quote is from because he's a very cancelled individual that I do not like, but I love this one quote by him, unfortunately, and it's, having things isn't fun, getting things is fun. And I do love that. Standalone, I love that quote because it rings so true. And one of my biggest fears, or something I've been thinking about recently, is how large language models, for example, gives us answers at our fingertips. And I think Andrew Huberman talks about this part of the brain called the anterior mid-singular cortex or something like that, which is basically this resilience muscle in the brain that is trained by not doing hard things, but doing things you don't want to do. So subjectively to me, subjectively to someone, going to the gym is pretty hard. But to me, I love working out. It's good for my brain. I feel good after it. So it's not hard for me. I want to do it. But things such as data entry and some of these mundane tasks might fall foul to that muscle, which is the anterior midcingulate cortex. We have proven that flow state and getting things is such an important integral part for the human psyche. However, LLMs might eradicate that. Is that something that's been playing on your consciousness, given that you're part of that ecosystem with your technology?
Absolutely. What I like to think about even in the workplace is that there's something that humans do really well, which is communication, which is that person-to-person connectivity. And in the quest for absolute efficiency, you don't want to lose that. So I want to tie all this back to AI. And what I would say is that if AI is doing a lot of the mundane things, it's giving humans time to build relationships. If you're in sales, customer success, if you are a engineer, a product person, you get to spend more time talking to your customers, imagining a world that you want to create for them. And now the technology and things are at your fingertips. So if anything, AI should free us up to have more communication if we choose to go that route. Like if we want to use it as a force for good rather than a force for evil, if you can use AI to give you more time and you take that time to communicate and spend more time. So maybe in the future, the companies that are going to have this like premium luxury experience are the ones that have great customer service, where it's like a human catering to all your things. You pay a premium for that human interaction versus like the self-service kiosk experience, right? If you think about all these like luxury hotels and all those things, it's not like the food is 10x better. They have a great story, and then they have a great customer experience, whether it's the sales rep, whoever, like they're catering to you. People want to feel catered to. People want to feel taken care of. That is something that I think humans can do uniquely well.
Looking ahead, will the next Shakespeare be a human or AI, or a augmentation of both?
It's funny because AI, when it hallucinates, we thought it would be a bug, but now people think it's a feature because the hallucination, where it makes up random stuff, is a sign of creativity. Like, think about how many artists, like the content, like as they've gotten older, the art became more and more abstract. That abstractiveness is like the same as AI hallucinating.
Yeah, because AI fills in the gaps without realizing it's a gap, often at times. And as a creator myself, that's where some of the magic happens. That's terrifying, but also
you go to a museum, you see a bunch of splashes on a canvas. I don't know how to appreciate art like some of these other people that can look at a blank canvas with 5 dots and say this is a masterpiece. Not throwing shade against artists, but it's something interesting because we're looking for novelty. We're looking for uniqueness. And when you ask AI to hallucinate or come up with something atypical, I think that's a feature. It's not a bug.
Yeah. Creativity, happiness happens in the messiness. And AI can get messy too. It just looks a bit different. I want to tie it back to the listener. I want to leave on a really positive note. There's probably a large proportion of the audience who are AI skeptical. What's to come? How can they look forward to this AI-centric future?
One thing that I do see with AI is it's incredibly deflationary, meaning things that were previously extremely expensive are going to be more affordable. Keeping the jobs part aside, if AI can make things much more affordable, like where you can be doing a regular everyday job, but then give your kids a private tutor, private classrooms, right? If you can do that with the help of AI, if you are able to get world-class medical treatment at a fraction of the cost, or maybe even free, thanks to AI. If you're able to have robots that can do the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning, and you can get that for the cost of a car, right? You buy an AI robot for the cost of a car, and that's doing all of the work at home, and you can have that happen. So when AI becomes incredibly deflationary, as a whole, it will lift up society and give you access to things that only really, really, really rich people could have access to. So that's, I think, one counterpoint with AI is it's going to actually level the overall playing field for everyone. I really do believe that, and I would want that to happen. The part around jobs and job displacement is build your career and skill sets for what the world would look like in 5 to 10 years. So learn to use AI tools, learn to up-level yourself. Because if today you refuse to send an email and only write mail by paper, you would not get a job, right? It's the same way where learn to adapt to the technology and evolve your skills. If you are very competent at using these AI tools, you will be more desired in the workplace. I think full-on automation, maybe it's a decade away, maybe it's more, but the point is you're going to need people to like learn how to use these things. The last part is we don't know what new roles, jobs, hobbies, things that AI will create that we did not have in the past. I'm not saying everyone should be an influencer, but we did not have the concept of podcasts and influencers 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The idea of being a social media star, like what does that mean? And these people are making insane amounts of money. What are they doing? They're doing creative stuff and communicating with people, telling stories. That's what most of these social media influencers, some of these are bigger than actors, right? So there will always be new opportunities that get created when technology innovates. And I think we need to believe that and never, never lose your sense of purpose and find your purpose in doing things that create value for others. If you can create value for others, you will always be relevant, no matter how much AI is there.
Krish Ramineni, everyone.